The controller has some neat computer gizmos to help look at how things are going. One device allows the controller or a radar associate to project flight paths and anticipate future conflicts. If there's a potential conflict, then possible solutions can go into the computer to see whether or not they will solve the potential conflict. Controllers can use this equipment to look at long direct legs that you might include in your flight plan. And controllers don't have any problem with those long direct legs once you're away from busy terminal areas where you will likely have to conform to the preferred routings whether or not they're published. As you fly along in the company of an air traffic controller, your airplane is a data block on his screen. This basically tells who you are, how high you're flying, and your ground speed, along with other items that are important to the air traffic control function. They have recently added a fourth line to the data block that the controller can use to avoid having to talk to another controller about things like a vector heading that might have been assigned or an altitude change request by the pilot that has not yet been granted. There's a line out in front of the target that shows how the airplane is tracking, and this relates to an important interface between pilot and controller. Flight strips used to be printed out and still are at some facilities. The centers now have electronic flight strips that contain the same basic information about the flight and where it's going. These get to the appropriate controller well in advance of our arrival in his airspace. Another way the controller helps watch out for us comes from our Mode C altitude readout. The controller can see how high we are in relation to terrain and to other aircraft. For terrain, the controller has a computer program that will give a minimum safe altitude warning if we stray too low. Most of the time, fortunately, the controller is looking at altitude only to see how we're doing in our climb, at cruise, or in a descent. If the descent is quite rapid, the controller's computer might not be able to keep up, and you might be asked to report leaving certain altitudes. When we're climbing or descending, the Mode C readout is what the controller sees. When we are level at cruise, a C goes by the data block, and the computer shows you level at the assigned altitude at any time you're within 200 feet of that altitude. Our onboard equipment might vary as to the precise point at which it would show you 200 feet high or low, but keeping it within 200 feet is a good bet. Most pilots have heard of the snitch machine. This is a computer program that snitches about the loss of legal separation, 1,000 feet and 5 miles for low-altitude en route traffic, between airplanes. If that happens, somebody, pilot or controller, is going to have to explain what caused the loss of separation. If a pilot just wanders off altitude with no conflict with other traffic, the controller will usually give an altimeter setting and ask the pilot to check his altitude. If it is reported as bang on, yet the controller still shows it off the assigned altitude, then the pilot might be asked to quit squawking altitude. The most common altitude busts come on climbs and descents and occur when a pilot goes through an altitude that was assigned. This is what altitude alerters are for, though altitudes are occasionally busted even with that equipment on board.